A man who collected around £5.8 million in cash of drugs money went on the run as the net closed around him. Thomas Bradley, is 33, was working as part of a criminal network which peddled huge quantities of coke and other Class A drugs. Him and three of his associates were the latest to be caught in the law enforcement infiltration of the Encrochat network, where criminals openly discussed their business. Using the damning messages, police built a case against Bradley, Nathan Lobley, Craig Ganson, and Paul Taylor, who used anonymous handles. Prosecutors were able to prove they were the men behind the anonymous accounts. Lobley was known as Carrot Toxic, Bradley as Lovely Seal, Ganson as Paper Boar, and Taylor as Aguero. Messages on the platform also revealed that Lobley had a firearm which he arranged to pass on to a third party. Greater Manchester Police said Lobley had taken possession of at least 19 kilos of coke. The force said Bradley had collected cash from 20 other Encrochat users. They said he was collecting on an almost daily basis and had collected approximately £2 million a month. Between 16th of March 2020 and 31st of May 2020, he had collected £5.8 million in cash. Ganson was described by the Greater Manchester Police Force as a wholesale regional supplier of coke and heroin. He purchased at least 11 kilos of coke and 2 kilos of heroin in April and June 2020. Taylor was said to have purchased a kilo of coke for around £37,000 on the 21st of April 2020 and passed £80,000 in cash to Bradley during the conspiracy period. Greater Manchester Police held a strike day in March 2022, and they said Bradley went on the run but was arrested, returned to the UK via Holyhead on December the 3rd that year. Greater Manchester Police said during the hearing at the Crown Court, Lobley was jailed for 14 years for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and for supplying firearms and ammunition. Bradley of Middleton was sentenced to 9 years for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and money laundering. Ganson from Chadderton was jailed for 7 years and 10 months for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. And Taylor of Rochdale was sentenced to 5 years and 8 months for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and money laundering. After the hearing, DC David Grimshaw from Greater Manchester Police's Serious Organised Crime Group said, "We are pleased with the result, which has seen these men taken off our streets for a considerable period of time. Our investigation was a complex one, and I'd like to thank everyone who played a role. Not only have we taken 4 drug dealers off the streets of Manchester, we have also disrupted a supplier of firearms. Manchester community should not have to live among drug dealers, and we are committed to ensuring that we identify, locate and remove these offenders." He said, "Organised crime can have an unprecedented effect on these communities, and it is vital that our work continues in these areas. These men thought that they were hiding behind an encrypted communication system that would mean identifying them would be difficult, but it wasn't." And guys, in this next news story, which is coming from Wales, a gang who formed part of an organised crime group in Cardiff and used Encrophones to source and supply Class A drugs in Wales have been jailed. In total, the group were moving more than 50 kilos of coke at a time. Kyle Johnson is 42, Lee Bridgman is 37, Samira Curl is 39, and Ali Ahmed is 48 ran the enterprise between March and May in 2020. An investigation which was launched by Tarian, which is the organised crime unit for South Wales Police, and at a sentencing hearing at Cardiff Crown Court, the court heard that Encrochat messages showed Johnson was the head of the organised crime group. He was arranging for the transportation of cash and drugs from West London to Cardiff and vice versa as payment for the coke which had been supplied through the group. Bridgman was believed to be the courier for both the drugs and the cash. Ahmed had acted as a courier for both cash and drugs, and that was the same for Curl. Johnson of Butetown denied any involvement in the offence and stated that the Encrochat device must have been in the possession of his business partner at the time. He was found guilty of conspiracy to supply Class A controlled drugs and was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment. Got Bridgman from Barry. He pleaded guilty last year for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and he was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment. Then you got Curl from Grangetown, stated that she'd never been in possession of any Encrochat enabled device and she was found guilty of conspiracy to supply Class A controlled drugs and was sentenced to 4 years imprisonment. And Ahmed from Grangetown, he actually legged it from the UK back in September 2022, and he currently has been found. And his trial was heard in his absence, and he was found guilty of conspiracy to supply controlled Class A drugs. He was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment. Following the hearing, a detective inspector from Tarion said this criminal gang have peddled misery in the local community and for their own financial benefit. Justice has caught up with them, and this has been a complex investigation, the result of dedicated police officers and staff working tirelessly to achieve this position. Encrochat was one of the world's largest encrypted communication services, in which users were given a modified mobile device. This came preloaded with private messaging apps that could be used to contact other Encrochat users. The security features made these popular devices with organized crime gangs, but the network was infiltrated by law enforcement in 2019, allowing us to view messages and gather vital evidence, as is the instance in this case. And in this next news story, a man who killed his friend in her own flat has been jailed. Anthony Green, who's 51 years old, from Nottinghamshire, was originally charged with Ruth Houghton's murder. The 46-year-old who lived in a flat on the same street was found dead on the 25th of September last year after concerns were raised by a family. Jailing Green for 12 years for manslaughter, Judge James Sampson said no sentence can right this grievous and devastating wrong. Green appeared at Nottingham Crown Court for sentencing just the other day, and he admitted killing Miss Houghton by tying a scarf around her neck and leaving her unconscious on a bed in a flat. He was initially charged with murder, but on the 10th of May, his guilty plea to manslaughter was accepted by prosecutors. Mary Pryor Casey said Miss Houghton had been killed by a significant sustained pressure being applied to her neck with a scarf. She added Ruth would have suffered fear and terror before she fell unconscious, and he did nothing to help and must have watched her die. Green was seen on CCTV coming and going from the flat several times on the 21st of September. He then locked the front door and took her phone, keys and other possessions. Miss Houghton's mother called police 4 days later due to her mother's instinct something was wrong. The court heard Miss Houghton had once been a happy young woman whose life took a downward turn when she became addicted to Class A drugs. In a statement, her family said she was a beautiful, intelligent, strong-willed, determined and gifted person whose life was cruelly taken away from her. She could speak multiple languages, having once worked in the army as a linguist. In the Royal Signal, she could also communicate in sign language. To hear the words, "she had died in such an awful circumstance," was truly devastating. Green's callous and malicious actions in taking Ruth's life and leaving her for several days, as well as stealing her possessions, makes him beyond redemption. When Green was arrested by police, he initially denied any involvement in her death. In mitigation, it was said he had been under the influence of Class A drugs at the time and that his guilty plea demonstrated remorse. Judge Sampson said it's clear your only thoughts were for yourself. You later went fishing with a friend, and there's no remorse in that. You gave a lying account in interview. There's no remorse in that. So Green will serve 8 years, 2/3 of his sentence, before being considered for release on licence. Detective Inspector Kaz Smithson of Nottinghamshire Police said this was a painstaking inquiry that involved trawling through many hours of CCTV footage, forensic work and analysis of mobile phone data. This has been a huge team effort. So guys, here's a number of stories coming out from the streets of the UK. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.